Everybody, and welcome back to Old Spook Lane Creepy Chats, where we're covering creepy topics this month on Creepy Chats. The bird of Hermes is my name. Eating my wings makes me tame.
And my name's Aaron of the Aaron Meta Show, and we look absolutely ridiculous.
I know. Yes, we do. Like, what the hell is even all this? It's not even Halloween yet.
Yeah,
And already
exactly.
we
Yeah.
look like a bunch of dorks.
I know, anyone who is clicked onto this video or is watching this podcast, I think everybody kind of knows, hopefully gets what we're doing here. But shall we just introduce this and then we'll probably explain ourselves a little bit,
Sure,
really.
why not? So today we're going into anime territory with discussing about Hellsing Ultimate, which was a 2006 to 2012 OVA series based off of the 1997 manga created by Kouta Hirano.
Or as I like to call it, it's where in gender swap hell is Carmen San Diego.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it does kind of look like Carmen San Diego with a mixture of Vash the Stampede from Trigun with the red getup and the hat and the glasses and the guns.
I just want to, before everyone starts getting on me, I just want to basically say this is that my experience with anime is very, very limited. I mean, Akira was probably like the first, anime movie I probably ever watched. And then I've kind of watched some episodes of Pokemon and besides that, I was never a fan of Dragon Ball Z. I never had Dragon Ball Z when I was growing up, and I never watched One Piece, and I never watched, some of the other anime that's out there. In fact, I've never had Crunchyroll. I've never really delved into, Japanese animation all that much, except for the occasional Miyazaki film. That's basically been it. So, walking into Hellsing, I got to be honest with everybody, I have no idea what to expect. And this genre is very random and very wacky.
Well, like, it depends on who's writing it, of course. They either have one of several camps. It's either like straightforward, filled with a lot of action, with characters that are either very, very strong and super, or just really, really weird and obscene.
And apparently wear mirrored glasses that you actually can't see their eyes most of the time.
No, you can't. The only
Yeah,
time when
exactly.
you can is when they pull out the glasses so they can look really cool.
Yeah, or if they're trying to see what and if they're talking to. So I'm really surprised. Has that joke ever been done where it's hey, I can't see in these damn glasses, so I'm just gonna take them off and then see what the hell's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, I'm going to take this off.
I
too.
think I will do it.
Yeah, this is just ridiculous.
Yeah, so going into this, I had no idea what to expect, but I'm just gonna basically give this overview. It's very bloody, very wacky, very strange, and yeah, as also someone who is from the Great Britain, I really don't know really too much what to make of it from that aspect as of yet.
Yeah.
Because it's I can't even make my way through what we're about to talk about, on the surface level, let alone into the British culture level of what this is trying to do.
I mean, it's essentially like a Japanese manga artist who was at the time well known for doing hentai, delving deep into his first serialized series, which was Hellsing.
Yeah, so like, gee, now that I've done like intense sexual stuff, let's do intense bloody stuff now. It's like, dude, you need like a normal, like,
This guy's not normal, by the way. I mean, in addition to Kouta Hirano being known for Hellsing, he's also known for another manga which is called
I've
Dreamers.
just seen the first image of him on your iPad, and good grief, yeah, he fits. Yeah, that's exactly what I think of when when I think of an artist like this.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I might be insulting a lot of people with this commentary, but I mean, I've never delved into the anime world all that much before. So, do forgive me if, my reactions to what we're about to talk about might, be, not what you're expecting. But as someone who has never delved all that much into anime, I got to be honest with you, I'm about to, really have, an interesting conversation with you.
All right then. So, now that we've talked in depth about what the hell we just watched, I guess we can talk about what the hell we just watched, which is Hellsing. So, Hellsing was based off of a 1997 manga, once again created by Kouta Hirano. So, it takes place in England, focusing on the Hellsing Organization, which is this organization who is known for fighting off supernatural beings for the Queen of England. And they are tasked with keeping England safe and unaware of the fact that there's a lot of supernatural beings. In this case, we're talking about vampires. So, yeah, basically blood sucking vampires who come into the deep of the night and basically just suck the blood out of everybody and turn them into ghouls. And yeah, the Hellsing organization is led by Sir Integra Hellsing, who is the last of the Hellsing organization that was originally led by, believe it or not, Abraham Van Helsing, as in like the same Abraham Van Helsing from Bram Stoker's Dracula. There's a lot of connections to Bram Stoker's Dracula in this incarnation of Hellsing, which makes a lot of sense considering that a few years prior, Francis Ford Coppola directed Bram Stoker's Dracula. And if you've seen one of the disguises of Dracula, who was originally played by Gary Oldman, one of the disguises was a trench coat and glasses and a hat. So I guess he was heavily influenced by around that time period in which when the classic horror genre was getting new life into various directors. And lo and behold, we have his interesting take on it, which is basically like a combination of Bram Stoker's Dracula mixed with Nazis.
I know, like but I'm sorry, but when you look at Alucard, when you first look at him, I mean, unfortunately, like I've been, indulged in so much '90s, nostalgia. I look at him and I just think, good grief, this guy looks like Carmen Sandiego.
He does.
He looks like he's cosplaying as Carmen Sandiego. I'm
Yes,
sorry,
he
like it's just
does.
that's the first thing that comes to mind every time I think of red hat and red trench coat.
Yeah, when you think of red trench coat, red fedora, sneaking around, you think of Carmen Sandiego.
Exactly, yeah, and anyone who's probably watching this and forget the '90s show and forget the all the video game stuff like that. I mean, the recent Netflix series of Carmen Sandiego. I mean, I'm sure like even modern fans who are probably watching this for the first time are probably making that comparison.
Well,
I mean,
either that or at the time there was another anime that was coming out called Trigun, and it had a character named Vash the Stampede who was dressed in red. He had a bunch of guns, he had sunglasses on, and so a lot of people were also comparing it to him. But Kota Hirano said that that wasn't the case at all. If anything, it was just a massive coincidence.
yeah, I think you'll find there's a lot of massive coincidences. I think in Hellsing Ultimate when
Yeah.
we go through it all.
So
So.
yeah, I just want to let you guys know, we have not seen the 1999 Gonzo animated incarnation of Hellsing, which is not direct from the manga. Because I mean, this is a thing that even still to this day happens, which I'm not a big fan of. Is that the manga was really really popular in 1997. They released a new chapter every single week, and at the time that the manga was out in 1999, it was like around maybe the fourth volume, which was around the time in which when um Alucard, Seras Victoria, and Pip Bernadotte were in Brazil, all the way up until probably when Rip Van Winkle was introduced. That's when they did the anime, and they strayed it far away from the manga, telling its own story. So very similar to Dragon Ball Z, the original Full Metal Alchemist, and even as of recently, Boruto Naruto Next Generations. They strayed far away from the manga because you had to wait so long for it to catch up with the story, and so they decided, let's just make up as we go along.
I mean,
Lasted for about 13 episodes. episodes, and yeah, it's a completely separate entity.
Well, again, I'm not against taking liberties with stories because let's be honest. I mean, like, look at Disney for example. Like, they've taken a lot of liberties with their stories, from the original source material. So, I mean, like, and we love some of those movies. So, who are we to complain?
That's true.
But
Yeah,
I mean, but in regards to Hellsing, I mean, like, I've never watched the original anime. I've never seen like the original TV series that came out. So, Hellsing Ultimate OVA effectively is my first introduction into Hellsing.
yeah,
So,
and that
I'm sure
is
there's going
what
to be
it.
a lot of people out there, and I just want to cover this right now. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people in the comments saying, "Oh, Aaron will enjoy it more if he actually read the anime and actually,
The manga.
the manga, sorry, and if he actually, watched the original TV series before he watched the OVA. Maybe I would have got more enjoyment out of it." And don't get me wrong, like, there's some aspects of a Hellsing which are actually kind of cool and I actually do enjoy. So as we go further into this discussion, I hope people are going to, get a well-rounded view of what I think of
Right.
this
And okay, so
SWAT.
yeah, number two, we also haven't seen Hellsing the Dawn, which is basically the six-part manga, which is a prequel of what happened during World War II, in which Walter C. Dornez and Alucard were fighting off the Nazis for the first time.
Okay.
We haven't read that part. And number three, and I know this will disappoint a lot of you guys who are watching in the comments, Aaron has never seen Hellsing Ultimate Abridged by
No.
Team 4 Star. So I've seen it several times over the years. It's awesome. They poke so many fantastic jokes about Hellsing as well as make up their own jokes. But Aaron hasn't seen it, so he's watching it face value as its own thing. So I wanted to get Aaron a fresh perspective on Hellsing before I introduce him to all the other stuff.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, I think Hellsing. I don't know if it was like a bit too much to like getting to enjoy my first anime. I don't know. Maybe there's going to be people who are going to be saying, "Oh, Aaron should watch this anime," and Aaron's watching. By the way, Vega. Just shout out to Vega, by the way, who we had on the Aaron Meta show many years ago. I'm sure she's basically jumping up and down saying, "Oh, Aaron should have watched this anime first and that anime first." She actually made some recommendations to me as well, and so maybe I should probably get around to those at some point.
Yeah, I
Now that
will
I'm
say this
into
for
this.
anybody who's watching this and are looking into watching anime for the first time. Hellsing is not a first recommendation to watch as your first anime.
Well, if you want to jump in the deep end, then by all means, I mean,
If
Hellsing
you want to
Ultimate is
do
like,
that, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so very similar to Over the Garden Wall, it's 10 episodes long, but unlike Over the Garden Wall, in which those episodes were 11 minutes long, these episodes are more or less like less than an hour.
yeah. Like, I mean, it looks like it's built for like, the running time of being like on somehow getting onto television. I've no idea how it would get past the censors,
Well, I
but
mean, it's Japan, so Japan has a lot more lenient on censorship when it comes to their programs as opposed
oh
to
yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, maybe somewhere down the line, maybe Hellsing Ultimate probably would have got on British TV somehow. I mean, I have
well, I
no
mean,
idea.
it didn't actually because this was an OVA.
Well, I know exactly, but I mean, like, if they did decide to do it, and I think very well past the watershed, I think at that point, and very probably somewhere in between the 11 to 1 o'clock in the morning mark, I probably imagine it being. I don't know, like, I'd be interested to see if I mean I don't know if it had got a rating from the BBFC. I'll have to see,
I
but
don't know,
I
but
don't know, but but here's the thing about this. I say it's wacky, I say it's crazy and everything like that, but there actually are some good ideas actually baked into this, this blood pie. I think you can always say to say that it is. I mean, like, I like the idea that, and by the way, we're going to go into spoilers with this. Just
yeah,
so
we can
everyone,
as well.
we'll go into spoilers in this way. I like the idea that these characters who are fighting one another, which are, they're centuries old, and but really they've never really grown up from where they were when they first basically became these monsters, effectively, or
Right.
became these caricatures. And I like the idea that they're holding on. The reason why they've been going on so long, if anything, it's kind of like the story of El Capitan from DuckTales. Like his obsession over gold has like kept him alive for hundreds of years, if anything. And it's the reason why, and it looks like it's the reason why these characters have become immortal. And despite the fact, that obviously, for the obvious reasons why they're immortal, but I mean, obviously, not only that, it's like their obsessions with with who they are and what they're not, and the deep involvement into the psyche of our characters is effectively keeping them on this earth effectively. Like, I like some of the ideas that that they can't let go until obviously they feel some kind of satisfaction with the trauma that they keep, and it's very telling. Like people hold on to trauma for like decades,
Or
effectively, and
in Alucard's case, centuries.
centuries. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the point is still made. I mean, like even though he's a stupid amount of time. I mean, I think that all aspects of it, I think, is very interesting. I
Mhm.
think in that regard. I think the also I like Sir Integra as well. By the way, her voice actress does a fantastic job as Sir Integra, and apparently she did play Victoria Harwood actually did play Sir Integra also in the TV series as well,
Mhm.
if I understand that as well. But I look for her IMDb, like she's done so. She's a fantastic voice actress. I'm really surprised she's not done more. Effectively, like I think she would have been a great Diana in the Hitman series.
Mhm.
I think she would have played him. He's played her beautifully, and I think she sounds like a very good girl boss. Effectively, and she could even be an antagonist. I could see her doing something really good in that regard. I'm just really surprised that she's never really followed it up. I mean, maybe she's more interested in like doing her dancing, and maybe when she's doing like her writing, maybe that's where she feels more comfortable. But she can definitely act. She
Yeah,
she's she's got a really great voice.
she does actually. And yeah, I mean that's a lot of the Funimation actors in a nutshell, in which that a lot of them either start off as like writers or producers. At the time it was like a very small Texas voice acting studio that would get a lot of acquirements of anime, and so they had like a very small pool of actors, and they would just cast like the same actors over and over and over again. But the price of doing that is that they were so versatile. Like you have people who are able to just play off these characters, and you realize, oh wow, it's done by one guy. Or hey, this person who does this acting is amazing, but they're in the writing or the producing department, and they don't use them for much else other than just writing and
Well, if you
producing.
remember, Luramara was doing behind the scenes stuff before he became Alfredo Linguini for the Pixar film Ratatouille. So
Yes.
I mean, they find talents in probably the most amazing places.
Yeah, same thing with like Bob Peterson, where he was a writer and a producer as well, and then eventually, hey, it's like, you want to do the voice of Ross from Monsters Inc. or
Oh,
Doug
also, and
from.
Brad Bird as well. I think also did the voice of Edna Mole from, and that was originally going to go to a very famous actress, and but then Brad Bird did the voice, and she said, "Oh, you don't need me. I mean, you've got it. There it is."
Yeah, there you
You
go.
know.
Yeah, just goes to show you that you have your resources in unexpected places, and you should take advantage of it. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the great voice actors in this series, I mean, they're all Funimation staples, especially Crispin Freeman, who is the voice of Alucard. And yeah, he's in so much anime, it's not even worth mentioning that. But yeah, I would say that his Alucard is definitely like really cool and collective, and he can be over the top if he needs to, just like it fits well with with the series in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, like, I definitely like, his delivery. And sometimes, like, you end up kind of just mocking it a little bit, really, because there's just times where he just gets absolutely ridiculous with it, and it's like, come on, dude. It's like, I was just about to take this character seriously, and it's like, then you just like do this over the top, and I mean, maybe that what gives him his standout, really, like the fact that he's centuries old, and he's never really like got with the times. If anything, like he has to be like that. There was a show back in the day on CITV called Phantom Cat, and they sort of play that off like where he is just like over the top, and he's just like he never really got with the modern times. Like he was trapped in a painting, and then all of a sudden he's brought into the modern world, and all of a sudden like he has to have an idea like what the movie theater is, and like what's this telephone I have to use. Like it's this I like this idea that Alucard's probably in that phase where it's like I'm still where I was, when I first became immortal, and I've never really got with the modern times, if anything. So I think, if anything, I would like to have seen more of that really out of Alucard. Really, the fact that he's a vampire who is living for centuries, and now he's in the modern world, and it's like, hey, what's all this modern technology that's around there? I mean, I get, doing that probably would have dated it a little bit, really. So I guess in a good way, I guess it's good they didn't go into that aspect of Alucard, but it would have been fun to watch if they decided to go in that direction, but they
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, but yeah, there's other characters other than Sir Integra and Alucard. So another character is Seras Victoria, who is the police girl, who she was in Cheddar, who was investigating that there's a whole bunch of ghouls about, and her police force go investigate it. They're all killed out except for her. And then you have this creepy priest who was threatening on. Oh, by the way, in addition to spoilers, for the younger audience, we're going to be talking about some very inappropriate stuff. So yeah.
Well, a trigger warning if we're
Yes,
gonna be doing those types
yes,
of
trust
things.
me, massive trigger warning.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this priest was threatening to molest her.
Yeah, exactly. And well, I mean, let's be honest about this. That's not the worst thing in this
Oh
character's
no,
backstory.
no, no,
Yeah.
not even close.
I mean, we're talking about, getting shot 3 times and watching her parents die in front of her, and then watching her mother basically get raped by one of the people who
While
killed
she's
their parent
dead.
while she's dead. While she's dead.
Necrophilia, ladies and gentlemen.
Just it's like, and again, like, that's one of the ridiculous aspects of this, and I'm not saying that that hasn't happened ever, but I mean, like, the fact that everyone in London dies and like all their blood falls into the sewer, and Alucard drags it all up like with a straw, and I'm joking about the straw, but like you kind of it's more like you can't really like react to it in like in a particular way. You just got to observe and just say, huh, like it's just okay. And there was just at one point I was just kind of like sat there watching it with you with my arms folded, and I was like, yeah, all right then. Like, it's trying to do this for shock value, and you can do it. What you can do shock value, I think, probably like maybe 2 times, and then maybe a third if you hit it right on them. If you do it sparsely, Hellsing throws everything in front of you. And the problem with that is that you kind of stop becoming shocked because it's like, yeah, you're just trying here to like shock me and in many different ways. And if anything, it's making the whole premise of the story sort of a bit ridiculous, really. Like, here's this vampire that's draining up all this blood out of like every single person, and then all of a sudden just kind of like, farting it out effectively. And then you see like all these, these his minions, I think, obviously, fighting amongst all
Well, I
these
mean,
Nazi vampires
he
and
only does that.
the Catholic Church
Oh yeah,
people.
we'll get that later. But yeah, he only does that when he releases restriction level 0.
Yeah, exactly. And but even when we got to that point, like we just seen so much ridiculous stuff before then. Like, this major antagonist that we had,
Oh yeah, the
for
major
the
who
major, like, I like the reveal that he's actually just like this heartless machine, which I think is that actually makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
When you get to the end of it, like, yeah, that rings. But I mean, but then obviously they didn't make much sense of it really when they showed him eating fish. So like, it's
Well, I mean, he's a
nah,
cyborg.
he's a cyborg. I mean, even then, like when they designed the character and like when they blew him up effectively, like you can't really see where. I mean, maybe that's the great thing about it is you can't really see where the machine starts and where the man ends
I mean,
effectively.
that was the whole point of
Yeah.
his character, where, after he was shot and killed by the Soviets during World War II, he had the opportunity to like drink the blood from the ground, very similar to what Alucard was doing right before he was, decapitated and executed. But he chose not to do it because he wanted to keep his humanity. And that's when the doctor came in and rescued him and turned him into a cyborg. And he was trying to justify his humanity even though that he took the bones of Mina Harper, yeah, again from Bram Stoker's
Dracula,
Dracula.
yeah.
He took the bones of Mina Harper that was affected by Alucard when, or Dracula. I know there's this mixture between like,
Well, the idea is that Dracula is like, the source of Alucard, and then everything around Dracula that Alucard has, everything that Dracula has absorbed has effectively turned him into
yeah,
Alucard. I think that's the idea
yeah,
of
he has
it.
multiple forms.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
so
that I understand.
yeah, that does make
I
a
don't
lot
know
of
everything that I don't understand.
that does make a lot of sense because in the original story, he turned into a bat, he turned into a wolf, he turned into mist, and his vampire persona appeared human-like. So he's able to have those multiple forms where you get to see him as Alucard, You get to see him as his girl form. You get to see him in his Dracula form when he releases Restraint Level 0. So he has a lot of different forms, which again makes a lot of sense within the mythology. And I just want to let everybody know who's confused about, like, okay, I'm familiar with Alucard from the Castlevania video games, where Alucard was the son of Dracula. Well, they're taking cues from, the source in which that Alucard is Dracula because his name is spelled backwards.
Yeah. So, I guess the thing I would like to focus on is the fact that obviously I'm British, and this takes place in Britain, and I'm sure there's a lot of people asking me, is what we've seen here effectively like, the Britain that we if we that we, you guys now understand from watching Hellsing, which is like, yes and no. Like, it's Britain's not like that, at least in my opinion. Like, I think if the creator of this, I think if he actually spent some time, maybe more in the north, maybe more than he did in. I don't know if he's ever been to Britain. I have no idea, but I think.
I'm not sure actually.
I think at least he's nailed, like, the thing with it is it's like it's kind of like Rugrats in Paris,
Yeah.
or like or any like movie where it's like, oh hey, we're gonna take your favorite characters and put them in X city, and X city has this thing that and that thing that it's like
Yeah, a lot of
it's
the
just
stereotypical landmarks.
yeah, those things are in this. What would have been interesting would have been, and I get that the whole thing take place in London. I get
Well,
that whole thing,
the
but
second half takes place.
well, the second place, I don't say the whole thing takes place in London. Obviously, we go to Brazil at one point.
Yeah, yeah. In episode 3, they go to Brazil.
I really thought when they went to Brazil, I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be the moment when they put Seras Victoria in a bikini, and this is going to be how they're going to like titillate like all the male people who are going to be listening to this.
No.
I'm glad they didn't do that, but I mean, it seems that all anime seems to have a beach episode, don't they? So like,
not in this case.
not in this case, no. I think which is probably for the best, but
Yeah, trust me.
but let's be honest. I mean, like, there's animes out there. That's one thing I do know is that every time they have a pretty anime girl, they want to stick her in like as little clothes as possible, and that's something I seem to have noticed, like when seeing general like clips of anime, but anyway, I digress. We go to Brazil. We go to various other places in the world.
Ireland was in the first episode.
Yeah, Ireland was in the first episode.
It's a mixture between Ireland and Cheddar.
But then they make it kind of like Ireland's just next door to Britain. You can just see it from like over the coast. No, that's not how Ireland works or how Britain works in any case. So France is actually nearer to Britain than Ireland actually is. But I mean, the thing with the way they've made Britain out to be. I think what I would have really loved to have seen is that if they were really going to make this a British sort of kind of like thing, they wouldn't have just put in like what the the vacation spots are and what the everything else is. I would have loved to have them seen like oh hey, we go to this part of the UK that no one's ever thought of before, seen before, but hey, it looks kind of pretty, and it's and the people there actually look rather nice. I actually would have liked to have seen them like go to various other places in the UK, not just the south. Effectively, let's be honest. They say it takes place in Britain, but let's be honest, it takes place in the south.
Yeah.
Effectively, like it takes place in the capital of Britain, and that's really all that you see.
Yeah, pretty much. Because I mean, you have the Hellsing Organization, but it's right by the countryside, which is I would say like several miles away from London, but again, you don't really see too much of the area. And as for Cheddar, I mean, the only thing that you see in Cheddar is just that wide open field filled with the ghouls and Seras Victoria being threatened by the priest. But again, you don't really see too much of Cheddar per se.
Yeah.
And as for Ireland, you have the hospital, but again, it's just the hospital. I mean, I guess the only time in which you get to see like a bigger landscape other than London is the scene when they go over to Italy and they're focusing on the Iscariot organization, which is basically this huge Catholic church group where they're also fighting off vampires led by Alexander Anderson.
And by the way, just to let you know, sorry, I'm just looking for looking for my tablet while you're saying it. In the whole so-called Zeppelin accident last, apparently like 3 million Londoners were killed. I mean, like that's not all of London. I mean, like at the time of 2010, there was like 8 million people living in London.
Well, again, this manga was written in 1997.
Oh, right, okay then. So I don't know what the population was at that time, but
I'm sure it was probably maybe around that.
maybe around that, maybe I'm not entirely sure, but I mean, like, in the way that they made it all out, like, where London is like a huge place,
Yes,
and
it is.
I mean, like, I guess probably everyone in central London probably died, maybe, and maybe everyone like in the outer parts of London probably also died, probably, like, but I don't know, like, if anyone says that, oh hey, I know my knowledge of England basically is Hellsing Ultimate, like you don't really know all that much about England. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, I mean, I guess we're really focusing on the second half of the series. So let's go into the first half.
All right.
So yeah, so episode 1, you have the introduction of the Hellsing Organization. You have Sir Integra sending Alucard over to Cheddar because there's a huge ghoul attack, and they're wondering where are all these vampires and ghouls coming from. And so you have the introduction of Seras Victoria, who gets killed off, and then Alucard turns her into a vampire, and he is training alongside with her so that she can be able to learn about how it is to become a vampire. There's also more ghouls that are being attacked, that are attacking a hospital in Ireland. They go over there to investigate. At the same time, in Italy, the Iscariot Organization, which is this huge Catholic church group, are sending in their best man, Alexander Anderson, so that they can be able to investigate the same attacks that are happening over there. And yeah, they butt heads with each other, even though that they fight for similar causes, which is to fight off all these ghouls. I mean, one does it for the queen, the other one does it for God.
Hmm.
They don't like each other one bit because Catholics are all about being Catholics, and anybody who's not Catholic are basically just
I might have missed this, but I'm really surprised that, with the sectarianism that's currently going on, between, the Catholics and the Protestants in, like, all of this. I'm really surprised that they never mentioned it once, the troubles in Northern Ireland or anything like that. I think they basically just said, oh, Irish, Catholics and, the English Protestants, which I'm kind of like, well, at the time that they say that this takes place in, I mean, like, where Catholics were living in England as well.
Mhm.
So like this wouldn't have been like much of a stretch, and I mean, who knows? Maybe some of the those priests that were fighting, alongside Anderson probably were living in England at the time as well. I don't know, but I mean, for me, the whole way that they kind of made this like all the Catholics are over there in Ireland or in the Vatican or over in Rome, and like only the Protestants are there in the UK. That's not really a fair reflection of like what the UK actually is. It's
Yeah.
actually if anything like where are all the Muslims in all of this place? Like where are the Hindus? Like where are
Yeah.
the Sikhs? Like like
Guess Kouta Hirano just wanted to focus on, you have the Catholic side and then you have the Hellsing Organization.
Yeah, exactly. And but I guess, and but even at the time when it was written, I mean, like Britain was a lot more multicultural than that. So I think that's another reason. I know people, I'm sure people saying, "Oh, it's an anime." Like when do you see vampires walking around in real life? It's like well, I think if you're doing like a fair reflection, I think, of a country, and you're doing a story that I'm sure there's going to be a lot of British people are going to be like watching, and who knows? I mean, maybe there's a lot of people in Britain who like Helsing. I'm not too sure. But for me, as someone who feels like this is taking place in his country, and you think you would, oh hey, maybe I'm gonna learn something about my country I didn't learn before. And by the way, you do learn like one or two things, which was quite interesting, and that including like there's some of the priests collaborated with the Nazis in order to basically hide them away in Argentina at the time.
Yes,
That happened.
that
So
actually did happen, yeah, and various other of the former Nazi soldiers and anybody who was working alongside with Hitler actually hid around Argentina and various South American countries so that they can be able to hide away from Nazi hunters.
exactly, yeah, and well, some of them didn't get weren't so fortunate. So yeah, it's and also just I like focusing on like the Nazi vampires. I guess you could say like I can't believe I'm saying that, and that's a brand new sentence for me. But I like the idea that they made them into monsters because, it really reflects like what the Nazis were back in the back, back in World War II. They were ruthless killers, and that's reflected in this. And the one thing that's interesting is that this battalion that's survived, the decimation of Nazi Germany, and now they are just, going in there effectively without any particular cause. Like they are just there basically just to destroy.
Yes.
Effectively, like they are as these aimless, monsters, effectively. And if anything, what it makes me interesting because you look at all the characters that are on the side of the antagonist, and it's like who's the main villain here when you really think about it? Is it
Yeah,
really the
because
Major, or is it the Doctor, or is
yeah,
it
these
like
are really interesting characters. I mean, like in the first episode's case, you don't really have too much of a villain. You just
I don't
basically
understand the Catboy though.
we'll get to Schrodinger later. Trust me, we'll get to
Oh,
him later.
Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then I get it now. I got it. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to him later, but
All right
yeah.
then.
So I guess that you have like little breadcrumbs of like, okay, there's these ghouls that are coming about. Where are they coming from? Who knows? Episode 2 gives us a little sprinkle of that, where you have two brothers known as Jan and Luke Valentine who are attacking the Hellsing Organization, decimating every single soldier and guard that is there, while Sir Integra is having a meeting with this group of people who are also protecting England. And yeah, I mean, essentially, we get little breadcrumbs here and there that there is this group called Millennium.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, like, that is basically what the first half of the series is that we have the Major who is sending in his minions to basically test out Alucard and his strength to see where they can be able to go for passing off their next big plan. And so they send over the brothers first. Well, actually, they send the ghouls first, over by Ireland and Cheddar. Then in the second episode, they send Jan and Luke over to the Hellsing Organization, basically just decimate everybody over there, with the exception of Sir Integra, Seras Victoria, Alucard, and the butler, Walter C. Dornez, who also fought alongside with Alucard during World War II, and who has been the protector of the Hellsing mansion for decades.
Yeah. And it's interesting that because I mean the one thing I again like forgive me everybody if I've not been following along closely enough, but I mean the Walter character was quite interesting in the fact that he'd been the protector, but so you're not really too sure like did he know, was the fix in from like the beginning, was Walter there just kind of like be a double agent for effectively like Millennium, and then he was going to turn, or was he captured like at that time
Yeah,
when
I mean, it's really
then he was like
interesting because
brainwashed, or like
yeah, it's very interesting because they delve into it a little bit on Hellsing the Dawn, where he was 14 years old, fighting alongside with Alucard, decimating everybody from World War II. And you get to see like little hints that he may or may not have known about the Major. And yeah, again, we'll get to this a little bit later, but there is a bit of a connection between Walter and the Nazis.
yeah.
But in the meanwhile, he's just the butler who's basically like decimating, the Valentines as well as the ghouls that they created out of the Helsing Organization soldiers and guards.
So I think the one thing I do like about it is that you do have like a cast of characters that you can really get invested in, and I really liked the mercenary. Mercenaries are really cool guys, I thought, and
Yeah,
like you really do feel like when they all died, like
yeah,
yeah.
they're introduced in the third episode, which is where after every single person that was guarding the Helsing organization is dead, Sir Integra goes over to hire mercenaries from France, who is led by Pip Bernadotte. And yeah, these guys are basically just killing off because they want to make money, and this is what they do. They just kill. And they have a love for killing, and they have a love for violence.
Yeah. And the one thing that I think you feel for them is that I mean, they are a bunch of characters that they are just the boys, and I think everybody who follows these types of stories about people like in the trenches, and you really hope that they come out of it, and obviously you get the the one person who dies and doesn't make it back, and then you have that, and what you really feel for it in this when you see them like but then you realize like these guys went into this knowing that they might not come back on the other side, And that kind of really does make you feel deep down that you care about them. That's one thing I love about character is that you build up a character who you can build some sympathy into, and you can I like the when they did the flashbacks of like every character to establish where they are, and and I think that's the best thing I think that this OVA I think did is that they didn't just leave them at on the present day and on the face and just told like a bunch of backstories and like that. They really did delve into the past and brought them into where they are today and gave fleshed out explanations.
Yeah.
I
I
think for
mean,
people,
yeah.
and I think that was probably the best thing they could have done in this situation. And
Yeah.
also, they did it within 10 episodes, and okay, each episode lasted 40 minutes. I understand that, but I mean, when you really think about it, that's a limited amount of time to effectively tell what is this the story from effectively centuries ago up all the way up until now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Every character has at least one backstory flashback that they can be able to delve into, whether it's that Sir Integra, she was taking in this position when she was only 12 because her father died and her uncle wanted to take over, but her father gave her this position of being the leader of this massive organization. Her uncle tried to kill her, and so she had to hide in the ducks so that she could be able to like, prevent herself from being killed. She goes over to the basement and releases Alucard, and Alucard is within her command because she is from the Hellsing Organization. Then you have Seras Victoria, which again, the backstory was just like wow. But the reason why she decided to go become a cop was because her father was a police officer and she wanted to follow in his footsteps. And also, she was a troubled child. Like she was going through a lot of torment and a lot of trauma, but she was able to overcome that when she became a police officer, and she had to redo that again, learning how to become a vampire. And she's in that brink of wanting to stay human, but knowing that she's no longer human, she's a vampire now. So she also has a bit of a story arc to her as well. And then of course Alucard, I mean, he starts off really badass with his guns and his shooting and all of his cool powers and all that stuff, but then you realize it's like this guy's messed up. Like the fact that he had a really bad backstory and being murdered by the Turks during the war and being basically defeated by Abraham Van Helsing and being essentially like a servant to the Helsing organization for decades at that point. So yeah, he even has a really tragic backstory.
He does, and I think that's the great thing about our characters is that they're not just manic for the sake of being crazy. They are there are reasons behind what's going on with them, and so the fact that they did that, I think is I'm really glad that they did because they're not just angry or they're just angsty or they're just mad at the world for no reason. They have reasons to be angry,
Yes.
and they did a very good job of explaining that, I think. And it's no, Alucard isn't just the way that he is because that's his person. That's just his one dimensional personality. That's not the reason at all. The fact that they went to great lengths to explain why he is to at that point to then is they did a very good job in doing that.
Yes, they did.
So.
And even going back into the mercenaries, the wild geese, the leader Pip, he even has a really interesting backstory where his entire family were mercenaries, and he was being teased by students when he was a kid. And he talks to his grandpa saying like, is it true that you used to kill and you used to be a mercenary back then? He's like, well, yeah, that's just how it was for 6 generations, and someday you'll be the same. And he ended up being that, a mercenary, and he's just following in that footsteps, and he's just as bloodthirsty as probably his grandfather and his father and everybody before him, and he's just doing his job.
Yeah, and there's people out there who feel a bit ashamed about like their previous generations of their family, but then eventually I think people come to terms with it and then just accept it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a story I think with Pippin in himself, and So,
And
yeah.
I just completely forgot about Maxwell.
Oh yeah, there's Maxwell as
Yeah, the
well.
fact that he was a bastard and he was brought into being raised by the Catholic Church, and he says that he's going to take revenge on anybody who dismissed him. And then he becomes power hungry and crazy, claiming to be just as big as the Pope, if not even bigger. And then just like wiping and decimating all the remaining survivors in London after the Nazis
It
attacked.
got interesting when Anderson said, "I don't feel good about this," and because at that time Anderson was like, "Oh, good grief, he's just blinded by like whatever the Bible basically tells him." But then you realize that oh, he's got his own thoughts and his own feelings about how the way things are going, and he's not just going to accept whatever the Catholic Church puts in front of him. And
Right.
he does like he looks like he has like he has basically has a moral a judgment that is not not necessarily handed down from like the higher ups within the church. It's hired by the God that he believes.
Right.
And I think that's an interesting conundrum in itself because Anderson is sworn to fight in the name of God, but then at the same time like he's been told contradictory things by the organization that he claims to defend.
Mhm.
So like there's I really wish they delved more into that actually. Like and I get there wasn't much time to do it, but it would have been interesting to see like a standoff between the higher ups in the church, a bit more of a standoff, I guess you could say, not just between Maxwell and Anderson, but between other people in there as well. And maybe Anderson's resolve start to kind of like dissolve a little bit, and like it is like like oh wait a second, what are we doing here? We've clearly lost our way and lost that, and we should go back to serving our Lord. And I think if they went a bit further in that direction, I think it would have been an interesting turn for the character. I
Mhm.
think, and
Yeah.
then obviously his death obviously would have been a lot more, a lot more sympathetic.
Yeah,
Because,
he
yeah,
he was so desperate of defeating Alucard that he decided that he was going to get Helene's nail, which is basically like one of the nails that supposedly was used when Jesus Christ was crucified. And he stabbed himself in the heart, and the thorns, again, like the reference to the thorny
yeah, Thorns of the
crown,
Crown, yeah.
and wrapping himself around his home body to essentially defeat Alucard. And then Alucard tells him, you now turned yourself into a monster. Like, you were so close in defeating me. I wanted a human to defeat me because I've lost that humanity. I wanted to feel somebody doing
Yeah,
that.
I didn't like that, to be honest with you. Like, it would have been more interesting. Is like, what's the one thing that kills vampires? It's a stake through the heart. And when he pulled that out, I was like, oh, it's the stake through the heart. And I thought, oh, he's gonna, put that. He's gonna try and stab that in Alucard, and then Alucard will die. I
Mhm.
thought that would have been, an interesting thing. But then, maybe Anderson would have had a second thought of like, wait a second, why am I doing this? And then, like, then they could have turned the character, I thought. But, who am I to judge? I mean, like, I don't write anime, do I? So, but it mentioned that, but so the fact that it was like, oh, hey, it's one of the nails they used to hang up Jesus. It's like, and then he stabs himself, like he turns into like a thorn bush. It's like no, yeah, it's not for me.
Okay.
Like it's just this. I thought it was kind of like, oh, hey, you spent all this time wanting to become a monster. Like, keep in mind, like he's been doing this for like centuries himself. Like he's actually pretty old and old too, from what I can understand. So, but yeah, it's just this. Yeah, it was one of the aspects of the OVA I didn't really like all that much, really.
Hmm.
So.
Well, the fight that I felt was a major standout was definitely between Zoran and Seras Victoria.
Oh yeah, there was that, and I liked all the fights that took place with Sarah. So I think that because she started off as very timid, and then all of a sudden, like she's like she wants to kick ass. Like I love characters like that. I love characters who will start off like I really don't know what I'm doing, and I feel really insecure about myself, but then it goes on like some kind of self discovery, and however they get there, and then when you finally get to the final bit where she just lets fly and like all hell breaks loose, and definitely all hell breaks loose, I guess you could say, even before we even get to Sarah's prime part. Like I love the whole build up towards that,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
the payoff is fantastic.
yeah, it was great, by the way. If the fight with Anderson and Alucard was a disappointment, the fight with Zoran versus Saris was absolutely perfect. Not
Oh,
only that, but there's this really great fight with Saris, Pip, and the captain, where he's a Nazi werewolf.
yeah, yeah. So it's at that point you're just kind of like, all right then, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, and they defeated him with silver. They found a silver tooth, and Pip was able to just stab it in the heart. And yeah, that was actually a really great fight too.
No, but as far as I'm aware, like they all had silver bullets, didn't they, and stuff like that. So like, why couldn't they just use that to kill him?
I
Huh?
mean, well, remember, Seras Victoria didn't have that in her arsenal. She
Oh
was
right.
using the guns that was in the airship.
Yeah, it would have been a good reference if they like they'd gone for like all of that, and then they said, "Oh hey, we found these silver bullets," and then just shot him.
Well, I
Like,
mean, they actually used. Remember that where they were at, the compartment that they were at, was filled with like money
oh,
and
it's all the
gold.
stuff that maybe they stole over the centuries. So yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
exactly. So I mean, like I thought it was gonna, I thought it was gonna just take the two, just jab it inside him, and it's like, oh, okay, then that's how he dies. It's like, well,
Yeah.
all right then, and that's the tooth. Like, well, one thing is kind of cool is that Alucard after defeating a vampire, he would drink the blood of the vampire and then incorporate like his that person's ability effectively. He's like he's kind of like Mega Man in a way, I guess you could say. But it's like fighting vampire Mega
Mega
Man.
Man.
So
We're fighting vampire.
yeah, oh God, Alucard's got my power.
Let's talk about Schrodinger, shall we?
Yeah, just this it's a cat boy.
Yes, it's a cat boy
Yeah.
because it's a reference to Schrodinger's cat.
So, like, I mean, what did he start? I mean, what was it? A cat that was then turned into a human? Like, was he like cat from Red Dwarf? I mean, like, yeah, I
It's
just
one of
don't know.
it's one of the doctor's experiments.
I know it's just this, but like the whole thing, that thing creeped me out pretty much. That thing.
I
So,
mean, it was
is it?
intentional because, as you guys know about the term Schrodinger's cat, is like, if you put a cat in a box and you give it poison, it's like, if you don't open the box, is it dead or alive? You don't know.
Hmm.
So it's like that interesting terminology about like if you put something very fatal in towards something or somebody. And if you just leave it alone, you don't know if it's alive or dead, which is where the term comes from. And in Schrodinger's case, they kill him multiple times, nothing happens. And then, of course, he becomes the key to the plan in which that after Alucard sucks up all the blood of everybody who died in London from the sewers so that he can be able to rejuvenate himself after fighting off Walter. Again, we'll get to this later. Schrodinger cuts off his head and he becomes one of the millions of people that Alucard sucks the blood of. And because of Schrodinger's cat, where, the term for the character is that he's everywhere but nowhere at the same time, he basically just disappears off the face of the earth because he has over 3 million souls inside him. And so it took him a long time to fight off all of these souls so that he can be able to get back to where he was.
Yeah. And so I mean like yeah, again like it's just this but let's be honest, I mean like I think the reason they put him in there is basically like cat boy and like so
Well, I mean, if you okay, well, fair enough, but I do understand what the reference is.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
yeah, that happened.
yeah, and that happened. And so yeah, and again, episodes 5 through 10 basically is just Millennium attacking all of London, decimating everybody, and
I got sick of the Major's monologuing. Like it's just this like I started looking through my phone when all that was going on, to be honest with you.
unfortunately that's a lot of anime in which that the villains just monologue and
If
monologue.
it was interesting, like nothing the Major had to say really interested me, to be quite honest with you. It was more like, oh hey, look at all this evil stuff that I'm doing, and this is the reason why I'm doing it because evil, evil, evil. And like I'm just sitting there like, dude, just do your fucking plan. I'm sorry to swear, but just do your plan. Like, just like let's see it all go along and then build the story up as we go along. But it's just there was just times I just said, dude, just shut up. Like, I mean, it's just I don't want to hear this. It's just the one reason why you do a monologue of a villain is because you want to hear a backstory. You want to hear how this plan's going to go into fruition. You don't care about like the philosophy of like of days gone by or what why the aspect like a certain set of why you believe certain things like that. There is such thing as too much information, and I feel like there was too much information here for me to care about.
Yeah, I would say again for everybody who wants to become a writer and want to be able to have a really engaging story, this has always been apparent, whatever it is, movies, TV shows, comic books, whatever. Show, don't tell.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, though, I'd like to hear more from like our other characters who we didn't really get to spend too much time about. Really, like I would like to spend more time with Anderson. I would like to spend more time with like with Sir Sir Integra. I would like to spend definitely more time with Alucard. Alucard was cool, and
Yeah, the problem is,
there was various other characters that you would love to have seen in that series. And I wouldn't be too surprised if people like when the Major got on the screen was monologuing for like 5 minutes, didn't just pick up the remote and just like fast forwarding through.
Mhm.
That's what I do. That's what I will do if I ever watch this again.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the thing about Alucard throughout episodes 5 through 8 is that he's not in the series because he's trapped in the airship. And the only way he was able to do it was he had to control it. And it took a very long time for him to control it. And so we focus on the other characters. We focus on the Major, the Doctor. We focus on Sir Integra, Walter, Seras Victoria. We focus on the Wild Geese. We focus on all the other baddies. More specifically, we focus on Soren, and we focus on a little bit of Maxwell and Alexander Anderson, but they come in a little bit later when all the chaos is, for the most part, almost done. So yeah, we get to see all of that play in, and we don't get to see Alucard until maybe episode 8 when he finally reaches over to London, and then all hell breaks loose, like literally. You have the Nazis fighting on one side. You have Anderson and the Templars fighting another
By
side.
the way, like this is not the KKK. This is like Templars that
Yeah.
that the KKK effectively stole the style from.
I know they made a joke like that in Hellsing Ultimate Abridged, but again, in context, for those who have never seen Hellsing Ultimate, it's the Templars, not the KKK.
Exactly, yeah. So.
Anyway, so yeah, so you have Alucard who's just basically like finally reaching over to London, and then he tells Sir Integra, "What do you want me to do? I will not attack until you give me orders." And she says, "Go all out." Releases level restraint level 0, and he releases over 3 million souls that he has had within him for over 500 years.
Yeah, and the one thing that was interesting with Sir Integra is that she can be. You see her to start off with, and she's very, very restrained, despite the fact everything that she's gone through in the time. And then it's Alucard that effectively brings her out, like saying that oh, did you enjoy doing that? Like you enjoy me giving an order that effectively destroys everything, and she just snaps. Effectively, like, because she likes her regal. She likes being a diplomatic, and that's her comfort zone. And then Alucard eventually just drags it out of her, like that you need to fight from time to time. Effectively, and that's what you get towards the end. Sir Integra effectively is like fencing people effectively now. So
Yeah.
like it's she's a lot. If anything, I love the dynamic between Alucard, who is just like hell bent on basically just getting the job done, and then you've got Sir Integra, who takes a more restrained view. Effectively, and only acts when necessary. Where Alucard hates that. It's like, I want my orders. I want to destroy something.
Yeah.
Give it to me, please. He's
Exactly.
begging for it to
Yeah.
tell to do it.
Yeah, well, while Sir Integra, on the other hand, is doing all the diplomatic stuff because the Hellsing Organization is under the Queen's orders, and so she's with all of the military, she's with the higher ups, and letting them know that this is what's going on. And
And we get to meet Your Majesty, apparently, and and I get that, this was written in the 90s, so she was a lot younger than she was, back then, back, before recently, before she passed away. But, yeah, I mean, I would say that, if there was ever a show or a movie, I think that, got, I guess the Queen somewhat right. I mean, like, I do like, obviously we saw the BFG
yes, we
1983
did.
version. I mean, that's from Cosgrove Hall. I mean, I could also recommend that for like, a somewhat representation of the Queen. But, obviously there was like, the Queen TV show, and there's been various other, aspects of the royals that have been like, described. But, in the stuff that I've reviewed and the stuff that I've grown up with, I think probably that's my favorite version of the Queen, I guess.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I know that there's other series that has come out in recent years. I haven't seen any of those. I've heard a lot of good things about The Crown as
Yeah.
well, but again, I haven't seen it, so I can't really comment on that. But yeah, she's not really much of a major part in the series. I mean, it's just that the Hellsing Organization is basically like under the Queen's rule, so that the people will not be aware of the fact that hey, there's actually vampires and ghouls and demons and Nazis about gonna be destroying all of England. Please protect them and make sure that we keep society safe. That'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, so let's see what else. Oh yeah, yeah, there's just a whole bunch of like chaos happening. And of course, we have a little bit of quote unquote betrayal. So again, the butler did it. So yeah,
Oh yeah, it's just like the of course it's the butler.
yeah, that trope about like the butler did it. It's like, yeah, so Walter was actually working alongside with the Nazis this entire time. And kind of like sprinkle on throughout the beginning where, it may or may not be implied that Sir Integra probably was trying to go over towards where Alucard was because Walter wanted her to wake him up after being asleep for decades and protecting her. And then as time went on, that was when they were able to plan out of eventually like taking over London and destroying everything. But yeah, I mean, Walter starts off as just this butler who was alongside with Sir Integra protecting her, has these really cool powers where he's able to have these strands of energy just like slicing everything into pieces. And then later on it turns out that he was actually with the Major. He got himself younger so that he can be able to defeat Alucard. And yeah, the experiment didn't work out properly. He gets younger and younger, and his body just gives out. And then eventually, he decides to just, take down the doctor and basically defeat him right before he dies. So, I mean, and essentially,
And again, it makes you wonder, like, was the Doctor, like, the massive villain this entire time? Like, he's the one who constructed the Major. He's the one who built these vampires. He's the
yeah,
one who did what he did to Walter. Like, if anything, he's probably like, I always love these type of villains. Like, it's not the guy who is in front of you. It's the guy who's behind the scenes, if anything. And, the guy who's like pulling the strings behind. I always like those types of villains.
yeah, so that is the doctor in a nutshell, where I mean, he's more of the bad guy than the Major, where he's just like all talk, and he does show off his ruthlessness. Like there's some parts in the
In a way,
episode.
he's not all talk. I mean, like, look what he did. Like, he's the one who built the Major. He's the one who made the vampires. He's the one who, like,
No, I'm talking about the Major.
oh, the Major. Sorry, like,
Yeah,
yeah.
like I mean, there are some moments in which the
Oh, yeah,
Major.
he's all talk. Like,
Yeah, the
yeah.
Major's all talk. I mean, there are some moments in which the Major does action. Like, there are some lieutenants who say, this is a terrible idea. We never wanted this. And so he would like demand his soldiers
But
to
in a
like
way,
shoot
like,
them down.
these guys were correct, and the Major basically just kills. That's what the Major kind of does, really. He just kills people and causes mayhem. That's effectively, and he just causes murder on a mass degree. If anything, so like, if anything, like, he never really is. I mean, like, the only reason, like, he gives the presence of being in charge, but so when you really think about it, like, all he is capable of doing is effectively just kind of just bossing people around and killing them.
Yeah, pretty much.
Effectively, like that's all he can really do, and the power really lies behind the people who behind the scenes who effectively give him his power.
Yeah.
Effectively, without that, he's nothing.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, again, it's all with the doctor. Without the doctor, the Major wouldn't even be around. Without the doctor, there wouldn't be ghouls. Without the doctor, anything that was happening throughout the course of the series probably would have never happened. They would have been defeated decades ago.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting, point in this story of Hellsing that if it wasn't for certain people doing what they did, like we wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the way that it ended was actually pretty interesting, where it takes place 30 years after the Millennium Incident, or what they call it, the Hindenburg
Yeah,
Incident.
and Sarah's effectively is like, the point girl at this point.
Yeah, she is the point girl, and Sir Integra is training the new generation. One of which is actually the grandson of one of the higher officers that actually sacrificed his life and blowing up the headquarters.
I
Where
love how, like, Sir Integra told a very very poetically licensed view of like what actually happened. But
Yeah, it's like your grandfather was the one who defeated me and gave me shot my eye out. And it's like, oh, and no, it was actually the major who did it, but she decided to like play off this lie to make sure that, Sir Penwood was actually more brave and heroic than what he was. I mean,
Mhm.
not to say that he wasn't. He did a major sacrifice where
Only towards the end though, like when he's back again was basically against the wall. Like he pretty much was willing to take liberties when or would be a little hands off when and a little cowardly when when he had the space to be so, but when he was put in a position where he couldn't go anywhere further forward. Like that's when he stood up.
yeah, that's right.
But yeah.
Yeah. And then, the grandson is like saying, are you sure that my grandfather actually did all this? And Sir Integra's like, yes. And let's buy another jet helicopter. And he's like, what? He's like, do it for grandfather. And then he's like, okay, I'll do it. And he started crying and running, just running back. It's like
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, I just like the fact that she's able to train the new generation of protectors because she even said it herself that when she dies, Hellsing is no more, and the Hellsing organization pretty much is just shut down afterwards.
No, if anything, it's going to go towards the state. The state's going to have to run it effectively.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes. So that's why she's training them while she still has the opportunity because she's 52 years old and she doesn't know how long she has left. And so she wants to make sure that everybody's ready just in case if anything were to happen like this in the future.
Yeah, so so what's my taxpayers' money going towards? Vampires. It's like, all right then. So,
Yeah, I mean they decimated London, so please let's not have that happen again. Yes, please
well,
take
didn't
all.
they explain away what happened there? I mean, didn't they explain away like, oh, it's just a Zeppelin accident? Like,
Yes,
nothing. That's the great thing about this is that the major thought that he was going to basically be remembered for like generations to come, and if anything, now it's like he's just if any he's not remembered for anything.
no,
Like
he's
he's
not.
just he literally does not exist in anyone's minds. Effectively, if anything, he was just a Zeppelin just landed in London and sadly killed 3 million people, and that's how they've explained this whole thing away.
Yeah, I mean, like again, the major was in his Zeppelin this entire time, never left.
Yeah.
He just had his ghouls basically just destroy everything,
And
and
it goes to the great thing about the Helsing story is that they remember people who built something and they don't remember people who destroyed stuff.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a great message, I think, to take away from this.
absolutely. Yeah, and then of course it ends off. I mean, of course Alucard was going to come back, but at the cost of
I think that was a bit of a cop out, if you ask me. It would have been more cool if, like, because Alucard had come towards, in a way, the end of his character evolution because he was confronted with what sets him off, all those centuries ago, and then with that standoff with Walter, we sort of saw the sort of the end of his story, if
Mhm.
anything. So I think it would have been sort of a cool way to for him to go out to say that. I mean, obviously, with the way that Schrodinger's character was done, I thought maybe it probably would have been a bit sad to see him going that way. Maybe it would have been cool if they did an Iron Giant ending where you saw him get blown up at the very end, but then you see that he's working to put himself back together, and maybe it would be cool to see a flash of Alucard's still alive, he's just still fighting, and maybe I'd like a cool ending where you see him fighting all these these millions of souls and had kind of like a Doom Eternal kind of thing, really. Maybe
Interesting.
that would be kind of cool to do. So but I mean I guess they went with oh, we can't kill off Alucard because everyone thinks Alucard is cool, so let's bring him back again.
Well,
Yay, Alucard.
I mean, at the same time, he does have Schrodinger's ability where he's at the same time everywhere and nowhere.
Yeah.
So, in a way, he is back, but he's not back, sort of. It's complicated.
Yeah, it is. So
Anyway, but yeah, that's Hellsing Ultimate in a nutshell.
So, I mean, in regards to my first OVA, I've never watched an anime sat down proper or anything like that. So this is literally the first one. Good grief, was it the first one to go into? I mean, it's so, I mean, are we scoring this or are we?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, okay. So, here's the thing about this. It's well drawn, and I like the characters in this,
Yeah,
and I think the story, I think, is a little bit, I think the story, I think, is quite solid. I think the character developments, I think, is quite solid as well. I mean, unfortunately, and I get this is a thing that animes do. I mean, it gets a bit ridiculous and a bit silly in places, and also, where the monologuing of like the major is just like you just want to boo skip. I want to get back to what makes the story interesting. These other characters that are around and then I just think it just gets a bit more get ridiculous in places. So I think that all that stuff effectively could have been cut out, in a way, and it could have been like, it didn't necessarily even have to be 10 episodes, or they could have filled the time up with something else,
Well,
effectively. And
again, this is basically a retelling of the manga.
I understand that, but I mean, yeah. So just to finish off, at least in my view of all of this. So and for me, like with that, I mean, it is cool, and it does have some good thoughts in it, and it has some good story in it, and but I think to balance it off with like how ridiculous it is, I think I'm gonna go with 7.5 out of 10.
Okay,
I
that's
think.
that's 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 about fair, yeah.
Yeah.
I probably would say more or less the same thing because it's actually interesting because the animation gets better in every episode because they had three animation studios working on it throughout those 6 years, and they're able to increase the production with all of the CGI that you get to see with Seras Victoria's guns, or you have the massive wide shots of the Hindenburg or the Zeppelins flying into the air, or all of the violence and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I would say like you have the first half, which starts off a little bit slow. It's just basically giving you like breadcrumbs of information, and then the second half just like blows it all the way with this major attack on London, and then it just builds up from there. And so yeah, there are some moments in which there's a lot of highs and some lows. Characters are really great. I really do enjoy the voice acting from the Funimation actors. And I do think that there are some times in which it gets silly, but then again, this is an over the top vampire story. I mean, I expect it to be silly. And especially within, something like an anime where it does tend to get a little bit over the top because, that's just sometimes par for the course. But yeah, I would say that it's a pretty solid anime. I mean, would I recommend it for people to check out as like their first anime? Absolutely not.
Definitely if you have a phobia for blood.
Yeah, if you're homophobic, do not watch this show.
No.
No. And also if you're like a little bit sensitive, if you're like like if there's some things that trigger you, like again mentioning like the rape and the necrophilia and a lot of the tragic traumatic backstories, again, I would take it with extreme caution. This is not something to show your kids. Do not show this with your kid.
Oh no, of course not. Good
Please,
grief.
please do not. I mean, there's a lot of other like child-friendly stuff out there that you can have them tune into. But yeah, I would say that if you're looking for like a bloody good time with like action, vampires, and gore and all that kind of stuff, I would say this is a pretty decent recommendation for you to check out. There's just some hiccups here and there with some of the character development and some of the story beats, but other than that, I would say it's a pretty solid anime. And again, I have not seen the original 1999 anime that was done by Gonzo, so I'm not gonna go into that. And I haven't seen Hellsing the Dawn, so I don't know about too much of the prequel story. So I'm not gonna go into that. I'm just taking it in face value that if you're interested in checking it out, go over to Crunchyroll and tune into it. And yeah, you'll have yourself a bloody good time, especially with Halloween approaching.
Cool.
All right, everyone. So that is it for this episode of Old Spook Lane Creepy Chats. So next week, I know that you guys are anticipating part two of Beetlejuice, the animated series, but we've only got through 1/3 of the series at this point. So you're going to have to wait a little bit longer, but we do have a very special guest coming in talking about a particular Nickelodeon animated series that is celebrating its 30th anniversary.
Yeah, but besides, until then, I really hope you're enjoying Halloween.
Yes, until then, everyone, take care.